A black CEO is kicked out of her own jewelry store. 1 minute later, the manager gets fired. The injustice of discrimination collides with the power of ownership in a moment that would change everything. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The morning sun cast long shadows across Copacabana's bustling streets as Maria Johnson made her way toward the gleaming facade of Empire Jewelers. The flagship store stood as a testament to her vision, a dream she had nurtured from a small workshop to Brazil's premier luxury jewelry brand. Today, however, she wasn't arriving in a company car or wearing designer clothes. Dressed in simple linen pants and a white blouse, Maria had chosen comfort over status. Her only adornment, the silver bracelet that had once belonged to her grandmother. The weight of the heirloom against her skin brought a familiar comfort. This delicate piece had inspired her first collection and remained the spiritual cornerstone of her empire. As she pushed open the heavy glass doors, Maria felt a surge of nostalgia mixed with quiet pride. This space, with its carefully curated displays and exclusive atmosphere, had been born from her sketches 15 years ago. Marble floors gleamed under precisely positioned lighting, designed to make diamonds sparkle and gold shimmer. The air was perfumed with subtle luxury, a scent she had personally selected. Yet despite creating every element of this environment, Maria felt strangely out of place. Several customers browsed the displays, attended by eager sales associates, none of whom recognized their CEO. Claire Davis emerged from the back office, clipboard in hand, her sharp gaze immediately assessing Maria. The store manager's expression shifted from professional courtesy to thinly veiled suspicion as she noted Maria's casual attire and dark skin. Claire straightened her designer suit and began moving purposefully across the floor toward the founder. The chill that settled over Maria had nothing to do with the store's carefully controlled temperature. She recognized that look had faced it countless times before founding Empire Jewelers, but never expected to encounter it in her own establishment. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had built this company precisely to create spaces where everyone felt valued. Beatrice Smith, a relatively new sales associate, glanced up from arranging a display of emerald earrings. Her eyes met Maria's briefly, a flicker of recognition crossing her face before she returned to her task, clearly uncomfortable with what was unfolding. Maria stood her ground, fingers unconsciously tracing the pattern on her grandmother's bracelet. In this moment, she was invisible in her own kingdom, judged for her appearance rather than her accomplishments. The founder and CEO had become just another black woman deemed unsuitable for the rarefied air of luxury retail. As Claire approached with unmistakable purpose, Maria felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about her anymore. What happened next would ripple through Empire Jewelers in ways no one in the store could possibly imagine. Claire Davis's voice sliced through the polished atmosphere of the jewelry store like a diamond cut. "Excuse me," she announced, loud enough for every customer to hear, her words bouncing off the marble floors. "You can't be here. This is a luxury establishment." Her perfectly manicured hand gestured toward Lucas Brown, the security guard stationed by the entrance. Lucas hesitated, his dark eyes flickering between Claire and the woman she was addressing. Something about the quiet dignity in the customer's stance made him uncomfortable with the manager's tone. "Is there a problem?" Maria Johnson asked, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. She wore simple clothes, a far cry from the designer outfits that typically walked through these doors, but the silver bracelet on her wrist gleamed under the strategic lighting of the display cases. "This store caters to a certain clientele," Claire replied, her smile tight and artificial. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." The implication hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Several customers paused their browsing, attention drawn to the confrontation. A young couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. An elderly woman frowned disapprovingly at Claire. Humiliation burned in Maria's chest like molten metal. But years of navigating corporate boardrooms had taught her to channel emotion into calculated action. She straightened her spine and met the manager's gaze with calm defiance. "I see," Maria said simply. Lucas took a reluctant step forward, following orders despite the conflict evident in his expression. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you." Maria raised her hand slightly, the gesture so authoritative that the security guard instinctively stopped mid-sentence. Without breaking eye contact with Claire, She reached into her handbag and retrieved her smartphone. Murmurs spread among the onlookers. A woman whispered to her companion. Someone discreetly began recording with their device. With deliberate movements, Maria unlocked her phone and scrolled through her contacts. The store manager's expression shifted from smug certainty to the first flickers of doubt. "Who are you calling?" Claire demanded, her confidence wavering slightly. Maria didn't answer. She simply pressed the call button and lifted the phone to her ear, her gaze never leaving Claire's face. The number she dialed would connect her to people who knew exactly who she was. Not just a black woman being judged by her appearance, but the founder and CEO of the very empire built upon these gleaming floors. The call connected, and Maria spoke words that would alter the fate of everyone present in ways none of them could yet imagine. "This is Maria Johnson," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. The board members recognized her immediately. "There's an emergency at the Copacabana store. I need you here now." The chairman's voice crackled through the phone. "What's happening, Maria?" "Someone needs to witness this firsthand," she replied, eyes fixed on Claire, who was still gesturing for her to leave. "I'm being thrown out of my own store." Within minutes, the news ricocheted through Empire Jewelers' corporate hierarchy. Executive assistants frantically rescheduled meetings while board members abandoned their morning coffees. The company's founder was being disrespected in their flagship location. This was unprecedented. Meanwhile, Claire Davis maintained her haughty demeanor, unaware of the hurricane she had unleashed. "I'm simply following protocol," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We have standards at Empire Jewelers." She smoothed her blazer, casting sideways glances at the growing crowd of customers who had stopped browsing to watch the confrontation. "Perhaps you'd like to shop somewhere more suitable for your budget," Claire added with a thin smile. Several onlookers had their smartphones out now, recording the exchange. The marble floors and crystal chandeliers that once symbolized exclusivity now framed a scene of blatant discrimination. A middle-aged woman shook her head in disgust, while a young couple whispered behind their hands. In the corner, Beatrice Smith watched the scene unfold with conflicting emotions. As a black sales associate who had faced similar judgment, she recognized the injustice unfolding before her. Yet she needed this job. Her fingers tightened around the velvet display cushion she'd been arranging, knuckles nearly white with tension. "Should I call security?" Lucas Brown asked Claire quietly, his discomfort evident. The security guard shifted his weight from one foot to another, clearly recognizing something was wrong with the situation. "That won't be necessary," Maria replied before Claire could answer. "Your supervisors will be here shortly." Beatrice caught Maria's eye across the showroom. There was something in that look, dignity perhaps, or quiet determination, that sparked a flicker of hope in her chest. For months she had endured subtle slights and overlooked promotions. Now, watching this elegant woman stand her ground, Beatrice felt something stir within her, a possibility that things might actually change. Outside, 3 black luxury vehicles pulled up to the curb. The board of Empire Jewelers had arrived, and the reckoning was about to begin. The glass doors of Empire Jewelers swung open as 3 board members rushed into the store, their concerned expressions turning to confusion as they surveyed the scene. Maria Johnson stood calmly in the center of the showroom, surrounded by whispering customers and a visibly agitated Claire Davis. "What seems to be the problem here?" asked Eduardo Mendez, the chief financial officer, glancing between Maria and Claire. Without a word, Maria slowly rolled up the sleeve of her simple blouse, revealing the silver bracelet that adorned her wrist. The intricate design, featuring a small aurora symbol, glinted under the store lights. It wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was the original prototype that had launched the entire Empire Jewelers brand 15 years ago. "My grandmother's bracelet," Maria said softly, "the one I wore when I signed our first lease." Recognition dawned on the executives' faces. Eduardo's eyes widened while Sofia Pereira, the marketing director, gasped audibly. The third board member, Thomas Wilson, removed his glasses in disbelief. The color drained from Claire's face as realization crashed over her. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. The manager's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she reached for the counter to steady herself. "You're Maria Johnson?" she finally stammered. "But I thought—" "You thought what, exactly?" Sophia asked, her voice sharp with disappointment. The silence that followed was deafening. Customers stood frozen, many still recording with their phones. Beatrice Smith watched from behind a display case, her eyes reflecting a mixture of vindication and apprehension. Eduardo cleared his throat. "Claire, I believe we need your keys, but I was just following protocol," Claire protested, her voice rising with desperation. She didn't identify herself. "How was I supposed to know? The protocol is to treat every person who walks through that door with respect," Thomas said firmly, "regardless of who they might be." With trembling hands, Claire unclipped her store keys from her belt. As she surrendered them to Eduardo, the finality of the moment seemed to hit her. Her carefully constructed professional facade crumbled, tears welling in her eyes. Lucas Brown stood nearby, his security uniform suddenly feeling too tight. He'd been torn between following Claire's orders and his own conscience. Now, watching the scene unfold, his relief was palpable. His eyes met Maria's briefly, conveying his silent loyalty. "Claire Davis, your employment with Empire Jewelers is terminated, effective immediately," Eduardo announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Please collect your personal belongings and leave the premises." As Claire walked stiffly toward the back room, her reputation disintegrating with each step, Maria remained standing in the center of her empire, quiet, dignified, and finally visible. The video of Maria Johnson being escorted from her own store spread like wildfire. By evening, it had been shared thousands of times across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, with outraged captions demanding justice. Brazilian news outlets picked up the story by nightfall, their headlines screaming about discrimination at one of Rio's most prestigious jewelry establishments. CEO humiliated in her own store became the trending topic nationwide. The footage captured Maria's composed demeanor as Claire Davis demanded her removal, and viewers were struck by the dignity with which the founder handled such blatant disrespect. The silver bracelet on her wrist, her grandmother's heirloom, glinted under the store lights as she made that fateful phone call, unaware that cameras were recording what would become a defining moment. By morning, crowds had gathered outside the Copacabana flagship store. Some carried handwritten signs, "Respect Black Excellence" and "Empire for Everyone." Security personnel stood nervously at the entrance as protesters called for Claire's termination and a complete overhaul of the company's hiring practices. Similar demonstrations appeared at other Empire Jewelers locations across Rio, with social media coordinating their efforts. "I've shopped there for years, but I never realized what was happening behind those beautiful displays," one longtime customer told a reporter, tears in her eyes as she removed her Empire Jewelers necklace. "I can't support a brand that treats people this way, even their own founder." Inside her minimalist office overlooking the city, Maria sat alone, watching the protests unfold on her computer screen. The board had been calling non-stop, demanding a public statement to quell the growing crisis. But she remained silent, her fingers tracing the pattern of her silver bracelet as she confronted a painful truth. The company she had built from nothing, her life's work and pride, had somehow absorbed the very prejudices she had fought against her entire career. The marble floors, the exclusive atmosphere, the subtle signals about who belonged and who didn't. She had created a monster while trying to claim her place in a world that had always excluded people who looked like her. "How did I not see it?" she whispered to the empty room. The empire she had constructed to prove her worth had become a fortress of the same elitism that once barred her entry. Outside her window, the protesters continued to gather, their voices rising in unified demand for change, a change that would have to begin with Maria herself. 6 months of turbulence swept through Empire Jewelers like a hurricane. The company that once stood as a symbol of unwavering tradition now found itself at a crossroad. Maria Johnson made a decision that sent shockwaves through the corporate hierarchy. She promoted Beatrice Smith, a black sales associate with exceptional customer service skills, to interim manager of the Copacabana flagship store. "I believe in your vision and your ability to transform this space," Maria told Beatrice during a private meeting in her office, the silver bracelet on her wrist catching the light as she handed over the store keys. The weight of those keys represented more than just access. They symbolized a transfer of trust and opportunity that had been denied to people like Beatrice for generations. The news spread quickly through company channels. For younger employees, Beatrice's promotion sparked excitement and possibility. For the old guard, however, it triggered resistance. In hushed conversations by the water cooler and during smoke breaks outside the building, senior staff members exchanged concerned glances and whispered criticism. "Standards will slip," muttered Ricardo, a regional director who had been with the company for 20 years. "Customers expect a certain image when they shop for luxury items." The sabotage began subtly. Important emails mysteriously failed to reach Beatrice's inbox. Inventory counts were altered just before her shifts. Customer complaints that had been resolved were reopened and directed to her attention. Someone even changed the security code to the display cases without informing her, causing an embarrassing scene with a wealthy client. During her third week as manager, Beatrice arrived to find her office desk drawers had been emptied, their contents scattered across the floor. Standing in the doorway, she felt her chest tighten with anger and hurt. For a moment, she considered calling Maria to resign. Instead, she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders and began picking up the papers. Anna Brown, watching from nearby, rushed to help. "You don't have to face this alone," the assistant said quietly as they restored order to the office. The hostility became more overt when a group of veteran salespeople deliberately undermined Beatrice's authority in front of customers. Yet with each challenge, her resolve only strengthened. She implemented new display techniques that increased sales by 15% in the first month. She reorganized staff schedules to better serve peak hours, reducing wait times and improving customer satisfaction. "They want me to fail," Beatrice confided to Anna one evening after closing, "but I didn't come this far to give them that satisfaction." By the end of her 6th month as interim manager, Beatrice had transformed the store's atmosphere. The marble floors still gleamed, but now they reflected a different kind of brilliance, one built on merit rather than prejudice. Maria Johnson's email inbox filled with messages labeled traitor and race baiter. The threats arrived daily, some vague, others disturbingly specific. Her phone rang at odd hours with callers who breathed heavily before hanging up. She reported each incident to the authorities but kept them from her staff, carrying this burden alone. The boardroom had become a battleground. Half the directors stood firmly behind Maria's vision for transformation. "Our customers are changing," argued Director Santos, pointing to market research. "We need to evolve with them." The opposition was equally vocal. "We've built our reputation on exclusivity," Director Mendez countered. "These changes risk alienating our core clientele." The tension was palpable during meetings, with sharp exchanges that left everyone exhausted. Meanwhile, in the quieter corners of the Copacabana store, Anna Brown sorted through customer correspondence with her usual efficiency. The assistant rarely spoke in meetings, preferring to blend into the background. Her colleagues sometimes forgot she was there. While organizing files, Anna discovered an envelope addressed to the woman who was mistreated. Inside was a handwritten letter from an elderly customer who had witnessed Maria's humiliation. The woman described her shame at not speaking up and how the incident had forced her to confront her own prejudices. "I've shopped at Empire for 30 years, the letter concluded, "but never felt prouder to be a customer than when I saw how you handled yourself with such dignity. You've changed how I see the world." Anna read the letter 3 times, tears welling in her eyes. She recognized something of herself in both the customer's silence and Maria's courage. That evening she made a copy before delivering the original to Maria's office. The next morning, during the staff meeting, Beatrice Smith presented her plans for restructuring the sales team. When she asked for feedback, the room fell into its usual uncomfortable silence. "I think it's brilliant," Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. Everyone turned, surprised to hear from the usually silent assistant. "The customer service metrics show we're already improving," Anna continued, her voice growing stronger. "And I've been tracking the feedback forms. People appreciate feeling welcome." Beatrice smiled warmly at her ally. "Thank you, Anna." Later, Maria called Anna to her office. "I received the letter," she said, holding the envelope. "Thank you." Anna nodded. "It reminded me why we're doing this." "It's not easy changing an empire," Maria replied, glancing at her grandmother's silver bracelet. "But it's the letters like these that make it worth the fight." Lucas Brown sat nervously in the cafe across from Juliana Mendez, a journalist from Rio's most respected newspaper. The security guard fidgeted with his coffee cup, unaccustomed to being interviewed. "I was just doing what felt right," Lucas explained, describing the infamous day at Empire Jewelers. When I saw how Claire treated Maria Johnson, something inside me froze. I knew following orders would mean betraying my principle. The article, published the next morning, portrayed Lucas not as a bystander but as someone who had silently supported the CEO through a moment of injustice. His thoughtful quotes about dignity and respect resonated with readers across Brazil. Within days, his story was featured on morning shows, social media, and even international publications. The security guard who stood for justice became the headline that transformed Lucas from an ordinary employee into a symbol of Empire Jewelers' evolution. Maria invited him to lead workshops on compassionate security practices, teaching guards to protect not just merchandise but also people's dignity. Security isn't just about keeping unwanted people out, Lucas told a room full of colleagues during his first training session. It's about making everyone feel safe and respected when they're inside. His approach revolutionized how the company viewed customer interactions. Security personnel began greeting visitors with warm smiles instead of suspicious glances. The marble floors that once intimidated now welcomed feet of all backgrounds. Meanwhile, Claire Davis was fighting a losing battle. From her apartment in Ipanema, she launched a defamation lawsuit against Empire Jewelers, claiming she had been unfairly portrayed and terminated without cause. Local television stations eagerly invited her to share her side. "I was simply following company protocol," Claire insisted during one particularly tense interview. "High-end establishments have standards. This isn't about discrimination, it's about maintaining our brand." Her arguments fell flat with viewers, who quickly noted the contradictions in her story. Each interview only damaged her reputation further, as she refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing or show remorse. When Claire claimed she had always treated everyone equally, social media erupted with testimonials from former customers who had experienced similar treatment at her hands. Her lawsuit became a textbook example of privilege refusing to recognize its own power. As Lucas rose within the company, Claire found herself blacklisted from luxury retailers across Rio. Her resistance to change had become a cautionary tale in corporate training sessions throughout the city. Sometimes, Lucas reflected during a board meeting where he presented his new security approach, "The strongest thing you can do is admit when the system is wrong." As the video of Maria Johnson's humiliation spread across Brazil, her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Every major network from Rio to São Paulo wanted an exclusive. Talk show hosts promised sympathetic interviews. News anchors pitched primetime specials about her journey. Her assistant fielded calls from international media outlets willing to fly her anywhere in the world to tell her story. Maria declined them all. "My dignity isn't entertainment," she told the board during an emergency meeting. "And justice isn't achieved through ratings." She sat in the boardroom, her grandmother's silver bracelet catching the light as she gestured. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly hoping the publicity might boost sales after the scandal. "The company needs positive coverage," one director argued. "This could humanize the brand." Maria's response was unwavering. "We don't need to humanize our brand. We need to humanize how we treat humans in our stores." Instead of media appearances, Maria worked late nights in her office, drafting a plan that would transform Empire Jewelers from within. Anna brought her coffee each evening, sometimes staying to offer insights from her perspective as a staff member who had witnessed discrimination firsthand. "What if we created opportunities specifically for women who've been overlooked?" Anna suggested one night, her voice gaining confidence with each word. 3 weeks after the incident, Maria made her only public statement. Without fanfare or a press conference, she released a simple video announcement from her desk. Wearing the same silver bracelet that had revealed her identity in the Copacabana store, she introduced the Open Showcase Project, a comprehensive fund to recruit, train and employ black women across all Empire Jewelers locations. "True luxury isn't about exclusion," she stated calmly. "It's about creating beauty that reflects all of us." The announcement landed like a meteor in the jewelry industry. Competitors scrambled to assess the implications. Industry publications debated whether this was brilliant marketing or financial suicide. Several luxury brands in Rio immediately issued statements about their own diversity initiatives, though most were clearly hastily assembled. Beatrice Smith received the news while working her shift. When customers began discussing it in the store, she felt a surge of hope that made her stand taller behind the counter. Lucas Brown, watching from his security post, caught her eye and nodded in quiet solidarity. That evening, Maria received a single message from an unknown number. "You've opened more than a showcase. You've opened a door." She never learned who sent it, but she saved it alongside the growing collection of messages from women across Brazil, who saw themselves, finally, in the reflection of Empire's future. The boardroom fell silent as the video played on the large screen. A former employee, Gabriela Mendes, had leaked footage showing 3 separate incidents of discrimination at Empire Jewelers locations across Rio. The most damning showed a black customer being followed by security, while white shoppers browsed freely. Maria Johnson watched the board members' faces, noting which ones looked shocked and which ones merely looked concerned about publicity. "This confirms what I've been saying for months," Maria said, her voice steady despite her anger. "This isn't about one incident with Claire Davis, it's systemic." The 12 board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Roberto Almeida, the most senior director, cleared his throat. "We should commission an independent audit immediately and prepare a public statement." "Not just a statement," Maria countered. "We need a comprehensive plan for reparations, training programs, hiring initiatives, community outreach," and Beatrice Smith confirmed as permanent manager at Copacabana. The last demand caused visible tension. Half the board exchanged glances. "Maria," said Elena Ferreira, tapping her pen against her notepad, "we all support diversity, but perhaps we should conduct a proper search. The manager position. Beatrice has only been interim for 5 months, and in those 5 months, store satisfaction scores have increased by 23%. Maria replied, sliding a report across the polished table. "The numbers speak for themselves." Roberto frowned. "The board appreciates your passion, but we need to consider all angles. Our traditional customers excluded people who look like me," Maria interrupted. "Like Beatrice. Is that the tradition you want to preserve?" The tension in the room thickened. Maria reached for her grandmother's silver bracelet, touching it for strength as she had countless times before. "If Beatrice isn't confirmed by the end of this meeting, I'll resign as CEO," she said quietly. Gasps echoed around the table. The company's stock would plummet. Their reputation, already fragile, would shatter. "You wouldn't," Elena whispered. "Try me," Maria replied, her eyes unwavering. For the first time, the board truly saw what they stood to lose. Not just Maria's leadership, but her vision, her integrity, her courage. The qualities that had built Empire Jewelers from nothing. Roberto was the first to concede. "I move to confirm Beatrice Smith as permanent manager of the Copacabana location, effective immediately." One by one, the directors voted. When the final tally came in, 8-4 in favor, Maria nodded once, satisfaction evident in her eyes. "Now," she said, "let's talk about that audit and reparations plan. This is just the beginning." The envelope arrived on Maria Johnson's desk, without fanfare, cream-colored paper with handwriting that trembled slightly at the edges. Inside was a letter from Dona Elisa, an 83-year-old woman who had lived in Copacabana her entire life. With each word Maria read, her composure cracked a little more. "I watched you on the news," Dona Elisa had written. 52 years ago, I stood in that same store, wearing my best dress. I wanted to buy a gift for my daughter's wedding. The manager told me the prices were probably beyond my means and suggested I try somewhere more suitable. I never returned until I saw your story." Tears streamed down Maria's face as she reached the end. This wasn't just about one humiliating morning. It was decades of invisible wounds carried by women who looked like her. She pressed her grandmother's silver bracelet against her wrist, feeling its cool weight like an anchor to her purpose. The next morning, Maria gathered her executive team. Her voice steady, she read Dona Elisa's letter aloud, watching their expressions shift from professional interest to genuine shock. "This is why we're changing," she said, placing the letter on the conference table. "Not for headlines or praise, but for every Dona Elisa who was ever made to feel unworthy on our marble floors." Within days, Maria launched the Voices of Empire forums, safe spaces where employees could share their experiences of discrimination. The first session was tentative, with nervous glances and hesitant voices. But when Anna Brown, usually so quiet, described how customers had asked to speak to someone else when she approached them. The floodgates opened. Lucas recounted being told to follow certain customers more closely based on appearance. A jewelry designer described having her ideas dismissed until a white colleague presented them. Beatrice Smith shared stories of customers asking if she was just cleaning when they saw her arranging displays. The board members who attended sat in stunned silence. These weren't statistics or sensitivity training exercises. These were their people, their company, their responsibility. "We've built an empire of gold and diamonds," Maria told them afterward, "but its foundation was fear and exclusion. Now we rebuild on truth." She framed Dona Elisa's letter and hung it in the main hallway of headquarters. Beneath it she placed a visitor's book where employees and customers could add their own stories. Day by day, page by page, Empire Jewelers began to acknowledge its past while writing a different future. The cold marble floors that had once echoed with whispered judgments now resonated with something new, the sound of overdue healing. Beatrice Smith's reflection stared back at her from the gleaming display case as she arranged a set of diamond earrings. 3 months into her role as interim manager, each day brought fresh challenges that tested her resolve. This morning she had already overheard 2 senior sales associates whispering about her lack of experience with luxury clientele when they thought she wasn't listening. "Smith is a customer asking to speak with the real manager," said Raphael, one of the newer employees, his discomfort evident. Beatrice straightened her blazer and nodded, the familiar sting of these interactions never quite dulling. "I am the real manager," she replied with practiced calm, following him to the front where an elderly woman waited, eyeing her with suspicion. After the customer finally left without purchasing anything, Beatrice retreated to the back office, allowing herself 5 minutes of privacy. The pressure to outperform was constant. One mistake would confirm every doubt whispered behind her back. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Anna Brown stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," Anna said, placing 1 cup on the desk. "That woman was impossible. I watched the whole thing." Beatrice accepted the coffee gratefully. "Just another day proving I belong here." Anna hesitated before sitting down. "You know, before you took over, I never spoke in meetings. Claire always made me feel like my ideas weren't worth hearing." The 2 women began meeting for lunch regularly, exchanging stories about the subtle and not-so-subtle barriers they'd faced. Anna shared insights about the store's operations that Beatrice, despite her sales experience, hadn't noticed. In return, Beatrice mentored Anna on leadership techniques she'd learned from Maria. When 3 long-time customers threatened to take their business elsewhere because of changes in management, Anna created a personalized outreach campaign that not only retained them, but increased their spending. "We make a good team," Beatrice told her after a particularly successful sales day. "The old empire would have kept us competing against each other instead of collaborating." Their alliance didn't go unnoticed. Some colleagues resented their growing influence, while others gravitated toward their inclusive approach. The marble floors that once echoed with hushed judgments now carried the sound of genuine laughter and honest conversation. One evening, as they worked late preparing quarterly reports, Anna looked up from her spreadsheet. "Do you ever wonder what Claire would think if she saw us now?" Beatrice smiled. "I don't care what she would think. I care what we're building." Their partnership became the blueprint for the company's transformation, proof that Empire Jewelers could shine brighter when built on mutual respect rather than intimidation. Lucas Brown's life had changed dramatically in the 6 months since the incident. Once just a security guard at Empire Jewelers' Copacabana store, he now found himself leading the company's groundbreaking Dignity and Security initiative. The program aimed to transform how security personnel interacted with customers across all Empire locations throughout Brazil. "Security doesn't have to mean intimidation," Lucas explained to a journalist from Rio's most prominent business magazine. The resulting profile, titled "The Guardian of Change," highlighted his journey from reluctant bystander to corporate changemaker. The article featured a photo of Lucas standing tall in his new tailored uniform, designed to be approachable rather than intimidating. In the boardroom, Maria Johnson nodded approvingly as Lucas presented the latest training statistics. "We've reduced customer complaints by 63% while maintaining the same level of loss prevention," he reported, his confidence growing with each presentation. The security professional who once stood frozen during Maria's humiliation had found his voice. Internal company newsletters celebrated his success, and employees began seeing him as the embodiment of the transformation happening within Empire Jewelers. His email inbox filled with messages from colleagues sharing their own experiences of discrimination and hopes for change. "Your story gave me courage," wrote one sales associate from the Ipanema branch. "I've been afraid to speak up about what I've seen happening to customers who don't look wealthy enough." Meanwhile, Claire Davis faced a harsh reality check. After her very public dismissal, she had struggled to secure another position in luxury retail. Her reputation had become toxic, with the video of her confrontation with Maria appearing in every background check. Finally, a smaller jewelry chain in São Paulo took a chance on her, desperate for someone with high-end experience. But within weeks, complaints surfaced. A customer of indigenous descent reported being followed unnecessarily throughout the store. Another claimed Claire had questioned the authenticity of her credit card. When confronted by her new employers, Claire became defensive. "I'm just maintaining standards," she insisted, using the same justification that had cost her the position at Empire Jewelers. The São Paulo store terminated her contract after just 3 months. As Claire cleared out her desk for the second time in a year, the reality became unavoidable. The industry was changing around her, with or without her consent. Back in Rio, Lucas stood before a group of new security recruits, many from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in luxury retail. "Our job isn't just to protect merchandise," he told them. "It's to protect the dignity of every person who walks through those doors." The gleaming boardroom of Empire Jewelers fell silent as Maria Johnson placed the contract on the polished table. Sebastian Laurent, CEO of European luxury giant Maison Elegance, had just offered €300 million for her company. The figure was staggering enough to secure her family's future for generations. There was just one condition: the diversity initiatives would be reconsidered to align with their traditional luxury approach. "We admire what you've built," Laurent said smoothly, "but our research shows the elite market responds better to conventional representation." His smile never reached his eyes. Maria fingered her grandmother's silver bracelet, the metal warm against her skin. The board members watched her intently, some with hope, others with calculation in their expressions. "How much is dignity worth?" she finally asked. "Can you put a price tag on legacy?" The European executive shifted uncomfortably. "Business is business, Ms. Johnson. Sentiment has its place, but not in the boardroom." Maria stood, her decision made. "Then we have nothing more to discuss." 3 days later, she appeared on Brazil's most-watched news program. The interviewer asked why she'd rejected such a lucrative offer when Empire Jewelers was still recovering from months of turmoil. "Value isn't just what something costs," Maria replied, her voice steady. "My grandmother wore this bracelet while cleaning houses for families who wouldn't let her enter through their front doors. She saved for 20 years to start our first tiny shop. What message would I send if I erased her struggle for a bigger bank account?" She leaned forward, passion lighting her eyes. "Luxury isn't about exclusion, it's about excellence. And excellence comes in every color, every background. We aren't just selling jewelry, we're selling the right to be seen, to belong, to shine." Within hours, the interview exploded across social media. Value isn't just price trended nationwide. Young women posted photos wearing their mothers' and grandmothers' jewelry, sharing stories of resilience and dream. Beatrice Smith organized a viewing party at the Copacabana store, where staff and customers watched together. Anna wiped away tears as her boss articulated what they'd all been fighting for. Lucas Brown shared the video with his security team, using it as a teaching moment about the deeper purpose of their work. Even some board members who had privately favored the sale called to congratulate Maria. Her stance had transformed her from a successful businesswoman into something more powerful, a voice for change that extended far beyond the walls of Empire Jewelers. That night, Maria received a text from an unknown number. "You've just changed the game for all of." It was signed simply, "A fellow CEO." The audit report landed on Maria Johnson's desk with the weight of a boulder. She flipped through the pages, her heart sinking with each revelation. The independent investigators had uncovered a systematic pattern of discrimination that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Several regional directors across Brazil had not only tolerated exclusionary practices, but actively encouraged them through unofficial customer profiles, that sales staff were expected to follow. "This goes beyond Claire," Maria whispered to herself, touching her grandmother's silver bracelet for strength. The silver felt cool against her skin, a reminder of her roots and purpose. The next morning, Empire Jewelers announced sweeping changes that sent shockwaves through the luxury retail industry. 4 regional directors were terminated immediately. 3 senior executives who had knowingly buried previous complaints were asked to resign. The board, now firmly behind Maria's vision, unanimously approved a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. "We cannot build our future on a foundation of exclusion," Maria stated in the company-wide email that detailed the new policies. Every employee would undergo mandatory inclusion training. Mystery shoppers from diverse backgrounds would regularly test stores' adherence to the new standards. A whistleblower program would protect those who reported violations. The Brazilian press descended like vultures, hungry for details. The story dominated business sections and morning shows alike. Some commentators questioned whether Empire Jewelers could survive such a dramatic overhaul. Others praised the company for its transparency in an industry notorious for its secrecy. By midweek, Maria's inbox overflowed with messages from women across Brazil. Indigenous entrepreneurs from Manaus, Afro-Brazilian students from Salvador, working mothers from São Paulo, all sharing stories of being judged, dismissed, or humiliated in luxury spaces. "Your courage gives us permission to demand better," wrote one woman from Recife. Beatrice Smith knocked gently on Maria's office door, finding her staring out the window at Copacabana Beach. "The media requests are piling up," Beatrice said. "They all want to know what's next." Maria turned, her expression resolute. "This was never just about our company, was it? It's about changing the rules that everyone plays by." "The entire industry is watching," Beatrice agreed. "Then let's give them something worth seeing," Maria replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. "If we can transform Empire Jewelers, we can create a blueprint for others to follow." That evening, as Maria drove home along the coastline, she realized her grandmother's bracelet, once a private symbol of resilience, had become something much more powerful, a catalyst for change that could reshape an entire industry's soul. After 6 months of transformation at Empire Jewelers, Maria Johnson called an extraordinary board meeting that would change the company forever. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation as executives and directors filed in, many still adjusting to the sweeping changes that had reshaped their corporate culture. "Today marks a new chapter," Maria announced, her grandmother's silver bracelet catching the light as she gestured. "I am stepping down as CEO to become chairwoman of the board." The room fell silent. Before anyone could process this revelation, she continued, "And I am naming Beatrice Smith as my successor." Gasps echoed across the polished table. Beatrice, who had been invited to the meeting without explanation, sat frozen in disbelief. The former sales associate who had risen to store manager was now being handed the keys to the entire empire. "This isn't charity," Maria clarified, her voice firm. "This is recognition of exceptional leadership during our most challenging time." She looked directly at the board members who had once resisted change. "Beatrice has demonstrated exactly what this company needs: courage, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to dignity." The news spread like wildfire through Rio's business community. Financial analysts questioned the decision, while social commentators hailed it as revolutionary. Within hours, Empire Jewelers' social media accounts were flooded with messages from women across Brazil, many sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination and celebrating Beatrice's appointment. On her first day as CEO, Beatrice arrived at headquarters before dawn. She stood in Maria's, now her office, taking in the view of Copacabana Beach. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders as she remembered her first day as a sales associate, how customers had often ignored her in favor of her white colleagues. When employees began arriving, Beatrice called an all-staff meeting. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the podium, but her voice remained steady. "I stand before you as living proof that Empire Jewelers is no longer just about selling luxury. It's about creating it through dignity and opportunity," she said. "I will honor Maria's legacy while building something new with all of you." Lucas Brown, now head of inclusive security, was the first to applaud, followed by Anna, and then the entire room. Even some of the skeptical board members joined in, recognizing that the tide of change was unstoppable. That evening, Beatrice found a handwritten note on her desk. "The bracelet was my grandmother's," Maria had written. "She cleaned houses to survive. Now her granddaughter's protégé runs an empire. This is what legacy truly means." Beatrice touched the note to her heart, then turned to face her first evening of decisions as CEO. 6 months into Beatrice Smith's tenure as CEO, the flagship store in Copacabana had undergone a remarkable transformation. What was once an exclusive sanctuary for the wealthy elite had become a vibrant center for change. The polished marble floors that had once intimidated now welcomed women from all walks of life, their footsteps echoing with purpose rather than trepidation. "This is where it all began," Beatrice often told new trainees, standing at the exact spot where Maria Johnson had been humiliated. "This is where we learned that luxury isn't about exclusion, it's about honoring the value in everyone." The store now hosted weekly training sessions for staff from all Empire Jewelers locations across Brazil. Employees learned not just about gemstones and precious metals, but about cultural sensitivity, unconscious bias, and the art of making every customer feel valued. The security team, under Lucas's guidance, practiced scenarios that emphasized respect over suspicion. The famous Aurora display, once the crown jewel of the store's collection, had been reimagined. Instead of simply showcasing the most expensive pieces, it now told stories featuring jewelry created by artisans from diverse backgrounds, each piece accompanied by the creator's journey. The glass cases that had once served as barriers now reflected the faces of women who might never have been welcomed before. "The display used to be about what you could afford," Anna explained to a group of visitors from a local business school. "Now it's about what you can become." Her confidence had blossomed in the new environment, her voice carrying across the showroom with an authority that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. On particularly busy days, Beatrice would sometimes work the floor herself, helping customers find pieces that spoke to their personal stories. The sight of the CEO assisting shoppers still surprised some of the older clientele, but it sent a powerful message about the company's values. One afternoon, an elderly woman entered the store clutching a newspaper clipping about Empire Jewelers' transformation. She approached Beatrice with tears in her eyes. 50 years ago, a saleswoman followed me around this very store, certain I was going to steal something," she confessed. "Today, I walked in and was greeted with a smile." These moments validated the difficult decisions that had brought them here. The Aurora display, once cold and intimidating, now glowed with a different kind of light, illuminating not just jewelry but a path forward for an industry built on exclusivity. As the sun set over Copacabana, each evening, the store's windows reflected a new reality, that true luxury was found not in keeping people out, but in welcoming them in. Anna Brown stood at the entrance of the training room, watching as her colleagues filed in for the morning meeting. 6 months ago, she would have been too intimidated to speak in front of them. Now, as the newly appointed assistant manager of Empire Jewelers' Copacabana store, she carried herself with quiet confidence. "My journey started right where many of you are sitting," Anna told the room, her voice steady. "I was afraid to speak up, afraid to be seen." She touched the silver name badge on her blazer, a small symbol of her achievement. "But what I've learned is that dignity and ambition aren't opposing forces, they strengthen each other." After the incident with Maria Johnson, Anna had enrolled in management courses at night, studying while maintaining her daytime responsibility. Her transformation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. The woman who once shrunk from attention now led team meetings and mentored new employees. Her story resonated throughout the company. 3 sales associates had already signed up for similar courses, and a junior accountant from the financial department had approached her about career advancement strategies. Anna created an informal mentoring circle that met weekly after hours, breaking down the invisible barriers that had once seemed impenetrable. "We don't need to choose between being respected and being successful," became her unofficial motto, one that spread across departments. Meanwhile, Lucas Brown had transformed the security approach across all Empire Jewelers locations. Gone were the days when guards hovered suspiciously near certain customers. His team now participated in bi-weekly workshops on empathy and respectful engagement, learning to create safety through connection rather than intimidation. "Security isn't just about protecting merchandise," Lucas explained during a company-wide presentation. "It's about ensuring everyone feels secure enough to be themselves in our space." The results were measurable. Customer complaints had decreased by 63%, while positive reviews mentioning staff interactions had doubled. People entered the stores with a noticeably different energy, shoulders relaxed, faces open, voices natural. One elderly woman who had shopped at Empire for decades told Beatrice Smith she finally felt comfortable bringing her granddaughter along. "For years I worried she'd face the same judgment I did," she admitted. "Now I know she'll be welcomed for who she is, not what she wears or how much she spends." Together, Anna and Lucas had created something remarkable, spaces where ambition and humanity flourished, side by side, where safety meant more than the absence of theft, and where every employee could envision a future limited only by their dreams, not their backgrounds. Maria Johnson embraced her new role as chairwoman with renewed purpose. The boardroom no longer confined her vision. Instead, she traversed Brazil, from bustling São Paulo to the coastal villages of Bahia, sharing her story with young women hungry for change. Her calendar filled with speaking engagements at universities, community centers, and business forums where audiences hung on her every word. "Your dignity is non-negotiable," she would tell them, her voice steady and clear. "An empire built on exclusion is merely a castle of sand waiting for the tide." The silver bracelet that had once belonged to her grandmother, a woman who had cleaned the very jewelry stores her granddaughter would one day own, caught the light as Maria gestured, becoming a visual metaphor for her message. In Rio's favelas, Maria established mentorship programs connecting aspiring entrepreneurs with resources they'd been systematically denied. She partnered with local organizations to create scholarships for young black women interested in business leadership, naming the initiative after her grandmother. "I didn't just want to change one company," she confided to a journalist from a major Brazilian newspaper. "I wanted to change what's possible." The article went viral, prompting discussions in boardrooms across Latin America about representation and authentic leadership. On a rainy Tuesday in Brasilia, Maria addressed a conference of business leaders, many skeptical of her method. "Profit and purpose are not enemies," she challenged them. "Empire Jewelers' revenue has increased 28% since our transformation." The data silenced her critics more effectively than any moral argument could have. Back in Rio, she often visited the Copacabana store unannounced, watching with quiet satisfaction as Beatrice Smith implemented her vision with a confidence that mirrored Maria's own. The two women would sometimes share coffee after hours, reflecting on how far they'd come and the distance yet to travel. The silver bracelet became more than personal jewelry. It transformed into a symbol recognized throughout Brazil. Women would touch their wrists when they saw Maria, a silent acknowledgement of shared struggle and determination. Artisans created replicas that sold out instantly, with proceeds funding education for girls in underserved communities. "My grandmother wore this while being told she didn't belong in spaces like this," Maria would say, holding up her wrist. "Now it reminds every woman who sees it that she belongs everywhere." The bracelet, that had once been hidden beneath her sleeve, now gleamed in the spotlight, catching the eyes of a nation beginning to see itself differently, through the legacy of a woman who refused to be invisible in her own empire. The applause was deafening as Maria Johnson accepted the Global Corporate Equality Award on behalf of Empire Jewelers. The international recognition validated what many in Brazil already knew. A single moment of injustice had sparked a revolution in corporate culture that now served as a blueprint for businesses worldwide. "This award belongs to everyone who refused to accept discrimination as normal," Maria said, her grandmother's silver bracelet catching the light as she gestured. Seated in the front row, Beatrice Smith watched with pride, her journey from sales associate to CEO representing the very transformation they celebrated. The Copacabana flagship store, once the site of Maria's humiliation, had become something no one could have predicted, a pilgrimage destination. Every day, visitors from across Brazil and beyond came to see the place where a quiet act of resistance had changed an industry. The marble floors that once intimidated now welcomed all, regardless of appearance or background. "We've had executives from 5 continents visit our training center," Lucas explained to a group of security professionals. His inclusive security program had become standard curriculum at business schools, his compassionate approach replacing the cold suspicion that had once defined luxury retail. Anna moved confidently through the store, mentoring new staff with the same patience she'd once needed herself. "Remember," she told them, "the most valuable thing in this building isn't in any display case." The transformation hadn't come without cost. Several board members had resigned rather than embrace the new direction. Claire Davis had eventually left the industry altogether, her resistance to change rendering her obsolete in a world that had moved forward without her. For Maria, now serving as chairwoman, the victory was bittersweet. She often thought about that morning in Copacabana, how easily she could have walked away, swallowed her pride, or sought revenge. Instead, she had chosen the harder path of systemic change. The real legacy isn't the jewelry, Maria told a group of young entrepreneurs during her monthly mentorship session. It's creating spaces where dignity isn't a luxury. The Aurora display, once merely a showcase for expensive gems, now held photographs and stories of the women who had transformed empire jewelers. Beside each image was a small silver bracelet, replicas of Maria's heirloom, symbols of continuity and courage. Brazil's jewelry industry had been forever altered. What Maria had built wasn't merely an empire of gold and precious stones, but something far more valuable, a foundation of courage, belonging, and unbreakable hope. The nation shone brighter now, not just from the glitter of gems, but from the light of justice that Maria had dared to demand.